Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 269 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is an entrepreneur and technologist with over 20 years of experience. He is a master facilitator and the author of 3 innovation books, Beyond the Prototype, How to Remix Anything, and Start Within. He is also the founder and president of Voltage Control, which is a facilitation agency helping teams to work better together. So welcome to the podcast, Douglas Ferguson.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Douglas, that's obviously very much a brief intro. Could you perhaps give us a bit of an insight into what you're currently doing and a little bit about Voltage Control?
Sure, absolutely. I founded Voltage Control about 3 years ago. As you mentioned, we're a facilitation agency. And what we mean by that is that we help teams come together and solve challenges through better meetings. And that takes on a few different forms. We'll facilitate meetings, experiences, and gatherings for our clients. We'll also train people on how to do these things, how to reimagine their meeting culture, or how to bring on facilitation into their practice. And we believe it's the future of leadership as we become more and more automated, as the need to move beyond Taylorist types of work environments, then this facilitated mindset becomes more and more important. And lastly, we transform, and this is where we help organizations really reinvent themselves from a cultural standpoint and from a facilitated leadership mindset perspective.
Sure. Do you focus on technology companies or is it broader than that?
It's pretty broad from the types of companies we work with. Now, I end up working with a lot of technology companies because I was a CTO for many, many years. And so
Yep.
that background really kind of speaks to a lot of their needs and interests. And, that said, we've worked with DoD contractors. We worked with public organizations and nonprofits and government types of organizations. And it really comes down to the fact that all organizations have people, and it's important when you have groups of people that we understand how to do the best work together that we can so that we get the best outcomes.
Yeah. I know most organizations obviously see themselves as different to everybody else, but do you find it's the same issues and problems that you face when you go into a company to sort out their facilitation issues?
Yeah, ultimately the underlying issues are the same. It's just
Yeah.
the domain specifics on top. And that's the beauty of the approach that we take, which are we don't come in with the answers. We're not consultants. We're not a sage from the stage telling you how to do things. We're a guide from the side. We're asking the right questions. We're creating the safe environment, the safe space to have conversations, and we're using tools to help people collaborate.
Yep.
And we have strong belief that the capabilities are on the team. The team, the company has what they need inside the walls. It's just a matter of how do we extract it? How do we unlock it?
Yep. Understood. Okay. Douglas, can you share with us a career tip, one that the audience may not be aware of and perhaps should be?
Yeah, I got told something really early in my career that really shaped me big time, and that was to look outside of my industry. It's really easy to get stuck into just the going to the same conferences everybody else goes to, listening to the same podcasts that are so focused on my industry and the way we do things. And there's a really amazing report that came out by Incentive that said that 70% of innovations um, already exist, and it was something like 90% of those came from a different industry. So if you're working in blockchain, go look and see who's using blockchain to solve problems in agriculture or like some other completely different domain than you're working in, and you'll see some novel thinking because and conferences can be a great way to do that. If you're if you're an automobile manufacturer, maybe go to an InfoSec conference. Step outside of the work that you do and see what language people are using, how they're approaching problems, and how they're talking about the work of the future.
Yes, it's often interesting, isn't it, to see what's sort of in vogue or the latest trend within a different industry, to see how that might come into your own industry in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Douglas, can you share with us your worst career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I think my worst moments have always been whenever I've let my emotions get the best of me. And I tend to go into shutdown when someone's overbearing or dresses me down in public, and I over the years I've become more adept at realizing that I am my own self, and like how they speak to me doesn't define me. And so moving past some of this imposter syndrome stuff that can really shut you down, and really take those moments and be stronger through them. And so when I think about those moments where I really struggled and went in shutdown mode, where I could have really been prepared and armed with some good language to use. And so maybe just from a tactical standpoint, maybe it's even something as simple as, what did you mean by that?
Yeah,
Makes them slow down and have to explain why they did that. And then it also opens the door for someone else in the room to stand up for you and to face some of those difficult conversations. And so I think that those things can be very defining, like how you navigate some of those interactions, and even just doing some meditation or reflection on, well, if you were to encounter something like that, how might you address it? And I think I had never been coached on that, and kind of went into several situations where I wasn't prepared, and so now I'm prepared.
yeah. So you put together your own strategy effectively to how to deal with those sort of situations.
Absolutely, and a lot of it is just language, right? Like if
Yeah,
you got a few little, I call it verbal judo. If you got some things in your back pocket you can pull out and use, and at the right moment, then it can be really helpful to move forward.
yeah. Do you find yourself less frequently in those situations now? Do you feel?
Yeah, I do, and I think a lot of it's because of the nuance around having some of those tools, and you can de-escalate before it even gets there. And I think part of it's too is because of maturity, and also being able to build my own company and hire people that I think have a lot of respect for other people and those sorts of things means that I'm less likely to be in those types of situations.
Yeah.
But they still pop up from the time to time, and I think they don't manifest as intensely, because I probably diffuse it a little bit more quickly.
Sure. So you're probably identifying maybe early warning signs, if you like, of these things that
hmm
are about to happen.
Yeah, and in fact, even just saying thanks for the feedback can be a great way to just receive it and let it
Yeah.
sit. And you don't, I'm a problem solver, and I think that is one of the issues, is that I'll start to, especially earlier in my career, I would want to fix it, and it would just like nag me if something came to loggerheads, and no matter what I did, I couldn't fix it. And sometimes you had to just come to terms with the fact that you just need to receive the feedback, understand it, and move on. And so that's been a big awareness as well.
Yeah. Okay. So moving away from your worst moment, can you tell us about your career highlight to date?
Mm. Wow. Yeah, I always have a hard time, picking a pinnacle, because I feel like I'm a lifelong learner, and so I'm always interested in, what new is out there, and how can we really, lean in on these new opportunities, these new doors that are opening. So I don't do a lot of looking back and saying, "Oh, that was I really, I really made it there," or whatever. But there was a really defining moment for me early on, where I was at one of my first startups here in Austin, and we were developing web analytics. This is early in the early days before us. At the time there was no Google Analytics, and there was companies like DoubleClick and Website Story and these things that were doing server log file analysis, and there was some issues there around proxy servers and whatnot that meant that data wasn't super reliable. And so we were early on experimenting with one by one transparent pixels that now is pretty prevalent.
Yeah.
And we were really enamored with our tech. And this was before the day and age of commodity storage and driving prices down. So we were using big E10,000 servers, EMC storage, and it was quite a technical feat to do some of this stuff. Whereas nowadays, with AWS and rent a server type stuff and auto scaling, some of these things are a lot more easily done. And we had signed Walmart, and so every time Walmart got a hit on their website, we got a hit on our website, and we had to scale alongside a lot of these big retail giants. And we were really proud of our tech. We had some really sophisticated reports, and along came this company called Omniture. And they're still around today. Coremetrics did get bought by IBM, but not nearly as much of a concern as Omniture these days, right?
Yeah.
And they had created a better user experience, and it wasn't clear to me at the time, but going through that experience, it really clicked for me, this need to balance the technical concerns and the elegance of what you've created, and the newness and the novelness of being able to accomplish something that's never been done before technically, with this market need and the design, the user experience. And so that was really formative in my early days as an engineer. And so I really look back at that fondly, because I was pretty lucky to get to learn that lesson so early in my career.
Do you feel that's something that you've taken into what you do now with your new company?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a lot of times people ask me, like, I never heard of a CTO running a facilitation agency. A lot of times
Yeah.
facilitators come from, social work. They were maybe a trainer, or a designer, but not a lot of deeply technical folks doing this work. And I just fell in love with, systems design. And in fact, the company's named after my modular synthesizer, because I often talk about how when I'm patching the synthesizer, it's a lot like designing organizations or working with teams to make sure that they're working as optimally as possible. Because any little change you make in a complicated patch with a synthesizer has ripple effects throughout the whole system,
Yeah.
and you have to consider those things. And so, the work that I was doing early on with extreme programming, and then agile, and lean, and then design sprints, they kind of all fed into each other, and I think really just speak to my just love of helping people be productive, efficient, and to get important work done.
Okay. Douglas, what excites you about the future of the IT industry and careers in IT?
I mean, for one thing, if you look at how our landscape is shifting due to the COVID, and the companies that have been successful and the ones that get hit harder, I think IT, software, technology is all supporting the pathway for the future. And it would be a lot more difficult without these technologies and these advancements. I mean, even the race for a vaccine is being supported by by many people that have lots of experience in IT, whether they're in a support function or directly in a research function. There applications like Foldit, and even I would say not only it's an academic research support functions, there's also the community, volunteers that are running Foldit at home, and helping researchers do this work. So
Yes.
it really does create this connected global environment that is really just profound if you think about it. And that's really, I think, at the core of what excites me about IT and the future.
Yeah. Do you feel there's any sort of value in the adaptability of IT as well? Because obviously, with the changing world, which you just talked about, the way we communicate, the way we use systems, is going to change, isn't it?
Oh yes, if there's anything that you can expect not to change, that is the fact that things will change, right? And especially more concerning now, and I kind of mentioned Taylorism a little earlier, and when factories first came about, Frederick Taylor, was in factories with stopwatches, like measuring how fast people could do things
Yep.
if they took a certain approach. And that reductionism really makes a lot of sense when we're dealing with, like, factory workers and very repeatable tasks. And IT and technology and thought work doesn't follow those rules. And in fact, the more and more that things are changing, and the more like I would say interrelated things become, the more and more we are deeply finding ourselves in a complex domain.
Yep.
And that's a nod to complexity science. But the more we're in this complex domain, the more and more we need to realize that solutions that would work in a complicated domain don't make sense. And in a complex domain, it's all about adaptability. It's all about placing lots of small risky bets, trying things and seeing what works. So having really tight feedback loops. You look at the military, they have the OODA loop. There's and agile, we have just development, iterative development. Ultimately, we have to get into some sort of model where we can try lots of things and reduce our risk at the same time, because in a complex system, what worked yesterday is not guaranteed to work today.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Okay, we're going to go into the reveal round now. We're going to find out a little bit more about you and the way you think. You ready for this?
Sure, let's do it.
So, what first attracted you to a career in IT?
Oh wow. I my father bought a Commodore 64 when I was a young lad,
Yep.
and I was just intrigued by it. I was always, I mean, maybe you'd take it back to even earlier days, because just I was always very curious and technically minded. And my father grew up on a farm, and so he had very much a DIY, like anything we can fix anything kind of mindset, right? And so often, if the car broke down, we were taking it apart and putting it together, and like, or fixing things at the house. And so I already had this like fearlessness about taking things apart and
Yep.
trying to figure out how they work. And then when the computer arrived, that was just a very mysterious thing, right? It's like, it like and so I was writing programs in BASIC that did silly things, like just, you know, literally with go tos and print lines, just printed out Frankenstein's face or whatever. It's like, and then it just got more sophisticated. And I think in high school, my dad was working. He was a turbine specialist at a power plant, and he had some spreadsheets that he was using to calibrate turbines and things. And I thought that would be a fun project to try to turn that into an application. So it wasn't just like it wasn't a spreadsheet. And in retrospect, it probably was just fine being a spreadsheet. In fact, I run into so many startup founders, and they tell me that you wouldn't believe people are using spreadsheets to solve this problem, and we need to write an application to fix that. And I think to myself, well, often the spreadsheet is just fine.
Yes,
And so,
exactly.
is there enough pain where there's some switching costs there? To say the least, it was an excuse for me to learn, and so I dove into that, and I kind of think that kind of shaped my interest, and I didn't really look back from that on.
What is the best career advice you've ever received?
Oh wow. I think um man, I've gotten so much career advice. Honestly, I think networking is so key. Especially, we were talking about adaptability, complexity. We're talking about this global interconnected community. If that's how the world functions and that's the system we're in, then we really need to make sure that we're building strong relationships so that we can thrive in that environment. And so, the meaning that if you have a really strong network of folks that understand different things, that come from different backgrounds, that network is going to support you and help you if you are ever in a moment that you're wrong-headed about something. They're going to gut check, they're going to check you on that stuff. They're going to maybe give you some perspective that you didn't have. And they can open up doors that maybe would not have been opened up previously, just making you aware of opportunities you didn't even know that were there. And so I highly encourage folks to just reach out, and whether it's attending a virtual meetup where you kind of tap into your local React or Node or whatnot community. When you attend conferences, think about the hallway time being as important as it is the kind of plenary sessions. Whether you're watching a speech or a panel, it's like who you meet in the hallways can be just as important.
Yep. And what is the worst career advice you've ever received?
Wow. Well, as you know, once as a leader, I had an engineer that had deleted um, uh, all our production data
Yes.
by accident, and I got and I posted it, and it was interesting. There was a lot of responses from people saying, "Well, you need to fire her." Or like never let her touch the production database again. And I thought, wow, that's like really bad advice. And I knew it right then. And luckily I knew it. My gut told me it was wrong.
Yep.
Because if I would have followed that advice, I would have missed an opportunity to really support one of the best engineers, that what turned out to be one of the best engineers we had on the team. And having lived through that experience, that was formative for her, right? And so she had an opportunity to experience like the just the pit in your stomach when something like that happens.
Yeah.
And so she has a scar that she can take into her work now going forward. And it was up to me to make sure that she had the right coaching and was going into it with the right mindset before I just knee jerked said like, oh, this person makes bad decisions.
Yeah.
This person got really unlucky and was maybe a little sloppy, but now is like, that was the thing that clicked. And I've never seen someone be as diligent, if you will, like because she's like, I'm never going through that again. And so yeah, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's just everyone was so ready just to like burn it down, fire, and it's like, man, it's like these learning opportunities can be really valuable versus like starting over scratch with someone new.
Exactly. Yeah. If you were to begin your IT career again in today's world, what would you do?
Oh, wow. If I was starting today, I, I'm really fascinated with AI and machine learning, and specifically the ethics and the anti-bias around this stuff,
Yeah.
because we're in a really formative place here, and I think that's probably where I'd spend a lot of my time. And frankly, I've done some reading on it. I love the book Our Last Invention. It's so fantastic. And I think if I were starting over, I think I'd be voraciously diving into that and kind of figuring out what little niche can I carve out for myself in that whole space.
Yep. And what career objectives are you currently focusing on?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm 3 years into a new company, and honestly, right now, well, over the past 3 months, it's just been navigating, this giant pivot that kind of got thrust upon us because a large portion of our revenue was from in-person events. So we held conferences, one for CTOs, one for facilitators, and we held big, large trainings. So we'd have like upwards to 100 or more people in a room together, doing a giant workshop to build skills. And we had to retool all of that. And, we were no strangers to remote work because our team's entirely distributed, but we weren't doing large format, long extended workshops virtually because it made more sense to bring people together to do those things.
Yeah.
And, we would do a lot of business development, small workshops to help people understand how we work, to plan things. We have this meeting mantra that's do the work in the meeting. So all of our meetings were always about driving results and output. So we're no strangers to those tools and how to work. We just had to update our marketing, to really repackage things and redesign stuff for longer formats, more extended time, larger groups of people. And that took a lot of work. And then also, having to engage with clients that were also struggling with this stuff and trying to figure it out, and simultaneously supporting our community of facilitators who are all losing lots of work, very uncertain of where things are going to go, just overwhelmed by what all this means and trying to make sense of it all. And so we were holding weekly sessions for them to come together and support that community. And so it's been an exhausting time, essentially pivoting the company in a way. And now we're starting to see a lot of more traction, and people are realizing that it's going to be a bit longer, and they've also gotten comfortable with how their day-to-day functions. And so now they're taking a look at like how do we now level up and do more. And
Yes.
so we're seeing that start to open. And so that's my main focus, is making sure we continue to deliver our level of excellence that that we're known for. And then I'm still kind of watching that deal flow very closely, because I'll switch back into growth mode once I'm very confident in the stability there. So as a leader, I'm like kind of managing, thinking about cash flow, and thinking about like when to shift more from a focus on execution to a little more focus on growth. And so that's kind of where I'm balancing things at the moment.
What's the number one non-technical skill that has helped you in your career so far?
I think it would have to be my ability to synthesize quickly and on the fly, and it's how the speed of processing information. And often I would find myself in meetings, and this was very early in my career, where I'd hear two people talking, and they were in what Crucial Conversations refers to as violent agreement, but like they were seeming to disagree.
Yeah.
So on the surface, you would think, wow, these people are like they're about to fight here. But looking at it a layer deeper, I'm like, well, they're saying the same thing just differently, and there's maybe one little thing that's kind of irrelevant that's causing them to misunderstand each other. And then likewise, I would see situations where people were like about ready to ratify a decision, but it was very clear to me that they were thinking of it differently.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
this ability to recognize those things, and to then, step up and say, hold on, let's like stop for a second and let me verify what I'm hearing. So part of it's active listening. And then there's also this ability to synthesize quickly and to detect some of these patterns. And I think that, that is what really drew me into the career of facilitation, because facilitation is all about being able to do those things.
Yep. And what do you do to keep your own career energized?
I think it's about learning new things. My wife always gives me a hard time because I've got stacks and stacks of books around, and
Yeah.
and she's like, "You never read these things." And I read an article not maybe it's about a year ago now, that said that having a bunch of books you haven't read around you is actually a good thing, because it keeps you humble. So there's a humility associated with this notion that like, oh, there's all this stuff I still don't know. And so that can be actually very inspiring, because in any moment you can say, that's what I need right now, and kind of dive into it and flip through it. So I think to me, it's all about just continuously learning and finding what's maybe new out there to dive into. And I will say that having little side projects can be a lot of fun. And so right now, I've in order to make our virtual workshops more fun, engaging, and compelling, I've really dove into OBS, which is the software that a lot of Twitch streamers use. It's open source software for basically almost like running a TV station, where you can kind of create scenes and switch between different scenes and layouts and text over top of your image and picture in picture. And I've really been enjoying configuring that, and building. I'm been using Macs for years, even though I was historically a PC guy. And I've just recently built a PC, so that was fun diving back into that land, just to get the OBS stuff working even better. And then I think it's about like finding like inspiration in little pockets, and just exploring those things, even if it's not super clear that there's a direct line between that and some profit or some career advancement or raise or something, because becoming well-rounded will make you much more attractive and much more valid and important to the organization. And I think that will be recognized.
Yes. Yeah. And what do you do in your spare time away from technology?
I love to box. I don't do sparring, but I love to put the gloves on and
Yeah.
just go to town on the heavy bag with some loud music. I'll dabble in some Pilates as well. I'm a musician, and so we'll patch up my modular synthesizer and play guitar, etc. So those are my main hobbies to kind of just disconnect from stuff. And I'm a big fan of what I call active meditation. And so, what are the things that I can do to occupy my hands and my mind that get me out of whatever problem I'm trying to work through? And so, the boxing is an example of physical exertion to the point where you can't think about anything else because you're just trying to breathe.
Yes.
And then the synthesizer is, I'm just totally engulfed by deciding how to tweak and following the flow of like how the electricity is reacting in these different modules, and so I get lost in that. And so all of it's a way of kind of shifting the brain to it's active meditation is how I like to refer to it.
Yep. Douglas, can you share a parting piece of career advice with the IT Career Energizer audience?
Yeah, I'll just come back to the facilitation piece. If there is one skill that is going to be critical in the future work, it's facilitation. As we have more and more automation, where AI is taking on more and more of the work that we do, there's going to be a bifurcation where there's going to be plenty of jobs that get deeply, deeply technical. They're almost going to be technicians for these things that we're developing, and then we're going to get more and more. There's going to be more and more need for the soft skills, and so when you think about that dynamic, plus this notion that a lot of the work's getting automated, well, we really need to rely on the things that make us the most human, and the things that differentiate us from the machines. And I think that is novel thought, creative solutions, innovation, and facilitation, bringing groups together to think through challenges and opportunities, and to tap into that intelligence that we develop together, that we call it the room intelligence. And if you're able to do that, then really amazing things can happen even beyond your wildest dreams. And so I just encourage people to lean more into that as they think about their journey on leadership, is how can we unleash everyone.
Okay. And Douglas, how can we find out more about you and connect with you?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, and I love to connect with people there. So I'd love for folks to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can also find me at voltagecontrol.com, and I'm at Douglas@voltagecontrol.com if anyone would like to email me.
Douglas, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
It's been great being here. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Phil here again. Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with today's guest. You can find full show notes on the website at itcareerenergizer.com/e and the number of the episode you've been listening to. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please make sure that you do, so that you get episodes automatically downloaded to your device every Monday. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.